Welcome to the second part of our Module 2. In this part, we're actually going to kind of go over how do you find your fit within these programs? How do you know who you approach? How do you know if what you're proposing actually matches their focus? And where do you go for some information? So we discussed the differences between the agencies before. But one thing to know is, where are the commonalities? Where do you actually have to find that combination of, do I qualify? Is this important? So when we talked about the dissimilar elements, you'll remember that they vary based on their funding levels, they vary based on the number of solicitations, they vary based on the proposal package requirements. But some key things to keep in mind is, no matter the agency, there are some common elements across them. So you have to be eligible for the SBIR and STTR programs before you can put a proposal into these agencies. And remember, the eligibility requirements are that it has to be a for-profit business, it has to be considered a small business, which is fewer than 500 employees, including affiliates. It has to be U.S. majority owned and controlled, and the research work has to happen within the US. Also, every one of these agencies has both a phase 1 and a phase 2. So there's no agency you're going to go to where you get a phase 1 and then you're going to go, well, where do I go from here? This agency doesn't have a phase 2. But even keeping that in mind, remember that you can actually leap between agencies during your transition from a phase 1 to a phase 2. You can also go between programs. So if you had a phase 1 SBIR, but now you know that in your phase 2, you need to bring in a research institution, you need to provide them a larger level of funding, you need to have a lot more of the technical work that goes off into that research agency, you can actually do an STTR for your phase 2. And all of these agencies are going to require some sort of technical writing. You're going to put together a proposal package. There's going to be a narrative that goes into, what is my solution? Why is it important? Essentially, you're going to answer the 5 W's and the H about the innovation. Who cares about it? Why do they care about it? What does that market look like? What are you going to do? Why are you going to do it? How are you going to go about it? No matter the agency, there is going to be some technical writing. Now, that technical writing can be 5 pages, it could be 25 pages. It really does depend on the agency. But along with that technical writing, you're going to have some other key things that no matter the agency, they're going to require. And one of those is a budget. So when you put together your plan, when you look at that scope of work for what I'm going to do during my phase 1 or my phase 2, they need to know, well, how much money is this going to cost? Why is it going to cost this? How is this going to be broken down? Why do you need, these people? Why do you need these researchers? Why do you need, these materials, these supplies? What is it going to do for the project? So no matter the agency, there is going to be some writing, and you're going to have to sit down with a spreadsheet and figure out some numbers and be ready to justify those numbers. Why do they need to give you this funding? How is that funding going to be broken up? Where is that funding going to go? Remember, at the heart of it, these are an investment. So when you have somebody that's going to invest in the company, they want to know how you're spending money. They want to know why you're spending the money you are. They want to know, what is that money going to do? Why are you spending it now? How does this make you have a very commercially viable product at the end of this lengthy process? And no matter the agency, remember, there has to be commercial potential. There has to be innovation. This has to be revolutionary. This has to be something that is very, very different. So when you're looking at that kind of cross between innovation and commercial potential, you really have to, focus on who cares about this, why do they care, and why is this a product that is needed? What is that pain point that you're addressing? What is that value proposition that's going to be driven from this? At the heart of it, that is what these programs are about. Solving technical challenges to make innovative products that have commercial potential. So with the different agencies, there is a lot of crossover that can actually happen, just depending on the agency. When we gave the really brief talk about NSF, remember NSF looks at everything that is within a scientific domain. So anything science, anything discovery, anything, no matter which focus of science, which domain of science it falls into, the National Science Foundation is going to be interested in it, as long as it is revolutionary, as long as it is innovative, and as long as it has commercial potential. Now, when you subdivide that out, there could be other multiple places that the solution can fit into. When you are making a health solution, so obviously the National Institutes of Health is all about anything related to health. Healthy people, healthy Americans, a healthy society. But because it falls upon science, National Science Foundation is going to be interested in it. However, you also have to think beyond that scope. You also have to think broader. So if it's someone like Department of Defense and you have a health innovation that can actually make warfighters healthier, then that could be something that they might be interested in. If it solves a problem that their warfighters are facing, if it solves a problem that is impacting their health, then it could be a fit for them. Or even NASA, if it's something that can make astronauts healthier, if it's something that can support the mission of long-haul flights. How do you keep the people healthy? How do you keep them functioning? How do you keep them viable when they're a few million miles away from the closest hospital? That can be something that actually fits, and that can be something that you can shop almost to different agencies. And it's great to focus on that, because then you know where the biggest bang for your buck is. Remember that the levels of funding and the periods of performance for these agencies can, drastically change. But it's not just about that level of funding when we talk about biggest bang for your buck. It's also the support programs that have been set up, some of the companion programs. Going back to the health example, so the National Science Foundation is definitely going to be interested in things that are health related. However, the National Institutes of Health has companion programs like their CRP, their CAP, supplemental phase 2s that can help you move that further along the innovation pipeline. They have an entire ecosystem that can help support you from that phase 1 all the way to a phase 3. So knowing those differences between what the agencies do, what they offer, how much they can fund, what are their companions, really does give you that overall picture of who is the best for me, who is the best, a department that's going to support my entire life cycle. Remember, you need to think about these as an entire project. Don't think about it as a discrete phase 1 or a discrete phase 2. Think about it from the full, development life cycle. So moving from that phase 1 where you have this idea, how do you get this idea all the way to the commercial market? And how do you find that support that's going to, stand you up every step of the way there? And when you're looking at that life cycle, you really do need to kind of plan for the future. That growth and development of where you're going to go, how you're going to be, how you're going to move, is that plan for the next few years. Agencies are increasingly having to answer to Congress on where did the SBIR and STTR funding go? Where are these commercial solutions? Why aren't they there? Why aren't they, viable? So having that plan, having that goal, having that, growth development over this entire funding period, again, over the entire funding period for the project, really does make you stand out. It shows that you have a purpose. It shows that you know what you need. It shows that you understand the resources that are going to be required to get you to the market. Where are you going to get those resources? And how are you going to make the most of these funding programs? Because these are a long process. From that phase 1 to a phase 2 to the commercial market, you're talking typically 3 years minimum. So you have to have that idea, that value statement for that 3 years about how is my business going to be viable? How are we going to function? Where is this going to go? How am I going to bring in other funding? How am I going to validate this over this period so I know that we're going right, so I know that we're making something? The worst thing you can do is have that field of dreams mentality. You're not going to build it and the customer's going to come. You have to build something that the customer wants, the customer needs, and it matches how they think the solution needs to be solved. Or you have to explicitly state that when you're creating their value proposition. You have to know how they use current solutions. Why is yours better? What can you do differently? Why are you going to have much bigger impacts with your solution than what can be available in the market right now? And when you're thinking about how do you approach that phase 1, remember one of the important aspects that you're going to seed throughout that proposal is how does this validate? How does this set me up for the phase 2? How does what I'm doing during this phase 1 inform what that phase 2 process is going to be? What are going to be your next steps? How are you going to continue down that pathway? How do you need to grow both your business, your team, even things like your partnerships, the, manufacturing? What steps are you going to take to make sure that this is something that can actually be built? Because establishing the feasibility is great. You know that it works. You know it's something that could potentially work. But where are you going to go from there? What do you do once you establish that feasibility? That end goal should always be the commercialization of what you have. That end goal should always be, I'm going to make this into a product. And it may not be a direct product you develop. Maybe it's something that you can actually license out. Maybe it's something that you set yourself up for acquisition. But they have to know that there is a finish line you're going to reach. That this isn't something that they're going to fund is just going to languish on a shelf somewhere going, well, this was great. I think this can be a product, but oh well, we don't have the resources to get it to market. You need to have that plan and you need to have that goal, because if you can't express that within that proposal package, the likelihood of you getting funded is going to drastically reduce. So when you're looking at how do you kind of focus that and how do you fit that, kind of make sure that that plan and that pathway really speaks to, again, that agency. When you're looking at, their research topics, because each agency publishes, the kinds of things that they're interested in, they're within the solicitation, maybe they're in a companion document like with NIH, but that information is out there. But it's not really just about looking at that static information. Also do some research, look at things like their prior awards. Have they funded stuff like this in the past? Where did that go? Is it something that's in the market right now? What is their strategic focus? Where does that agency want to be in the next 5 or 10 years? Do you align with that strategic focus? What are their latest publications? What information are they putting out there? What do they think is the current state of the art when it comes to the product you're going to eventually develop at the end of this? Are you just matching the state of the art? Are you eclipsing the state of the art? Are you shifting the state of the art? You have to know where everybody else is, where that research is, where they think stuff is going, and then how are you better? How are you stronger? How are you faster? Whatever that is, you have to be able to know that and express that. And also keep in mind that with some of these agencies, you can actually, kind of not really force, but you can have a guiding hand in how they develop the topics. So things like Department of Defense, a lot of times they don't know the issues that they're actually facing. So make some contacts, find out more, find out what they're working on, find out where their big pain points are. You might be able to seed a project that they can wrap a topic around. our Department of Transportation and Department of Homeland Security are really great examples of this. They both offer a way for you to submit a topic. Now, you're not probably going to submit it and it's going to be in the very next release because there is a lot of planning that goes into these, but maybe it's 6 months down the road, maybe it's a year down the road. Do what you can to make sure that what you're developing matches what they think is innovative. And that's kind of the heart of it, is if you can get ahead of where their thoughts are, where their goals are, you can, frame that, you can shape that discussion, you can shape what they think is revolutionary, and then you are a perfect match for that. And one last thing to keep in mind when you're thinking about how do I match, where is this focus, where is this going? Be broad with your innovation. Kind of keep in mind that innovation can come from any part of the development process. Maybe the way you're doing something is, or maybe what you're creating is not really innovative, it's not really revolutionary, but the way you got there is revolutionary. Maybe you had to set up this extremely intricate process and pull all this data in and make these machine learning guided or algorithmic guided decisions on how you proceed forward as a company. That can be innovative. That can be revolutionary. There's probably a topic fit for that. And then, at least with National Science Foundation, again, they look at anything science and discovery. That's scientific. That's taking the scientific process and mapping it to new things, new ways to think about data, new ways to interpret data and analyze it and come up with a solution. But even when you get a product, maybe there's something related to the logistics, maybe there's something related to the supply chain, maybe there's something related to your creation process that is innovative. SVIR and STTR awards can be multifaceted and multi-layered. Just because you got an award for one thing doesn't mean you can't get awards for other things. And remember our example, from a couple sessions ago, is component technologies are also great. Maybe you have to figure out some things. Maybe you have to actually break this out into discrete technologies. And then you're going to wrap those technologies together and create a product that's going to wow the world and knock everyone's socks off. That is also a valid way to think about innovation and think about how you approach these topics and how you make sure that what you're creating matches where their head is as an agency or where they want to go. That's really the best way to kind of use these topics, is to think about it broadly and think about, can I actually break this down? Can I create discrete projects? Can I look at this a different way? Can I make sure that this is something that, even if it's not the most revolutionary now, I can make it revolutionary. I can add ability. I can add innovation. I can add components that is really going to speak to a need that is not being met in the marketplace. So when you're thinking about how do you approach these programs, kind of keep that information in mind and know, where are those solicitations? How do I approach them? How do I get to them? Within this module, we actually have a I call it page. It's not really a page, but a subdivision for each one of the agencies, where we show you, where do you go for those topics? What do they focus on? What is their mission? Why is that their mission? If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us, and we would be happy to not really tell you, but to talk with you about, how do you approach innovation? What are you creating? Where are the possible fits? And how might you be able to restructure this so that it actually fits across multiple agencies? Because that's going to be the best way to get the most value out of these programs.